practice, we're going to start at the wall. So if you can start putting your backside up against the wall, you might want to bend your knees to hinge at the hips and start to fold forward. My feet are about 2 feet away from the wall, so there's a slant. And I prefer that because it allows you to feel supported by the wall while you come forward. It brings a gentler approach and something that you can hold a little bit longer. So as you start to come forward too, you might decide that your feet want to be further apart, or maybe just right in line with your pelvis. Wiggle your toes. Sometimes I like to lift the toes up and down a few rounds. And then maybe same with the heels, lift your heels up and down if you're able. If it's enough just for you to hang out here, please just do that. Eventually dropping your head down, shaking your head out, taking some focused breaths. You can always bring your hands back to the wall and readjust how you're positioned. And maybe even straighten your legs a little bit more. In yin yoga, I use this shape a lot to take a 3 to 5 minute hold and to slow my nervous system. So especially if it's a certain time in my cycle, or if I'm feeling kind of stressed out or overwhelmed, this can feel good just to let emotions through, using your breath and just the metaphor of your body like spilling some stuff out. You could stay for as long as you'd like, but if you're ready to come up, you might start to bend your knees like you're taking a wall sit. You bring your shoulder blades to the back of the wall, start to bend your knees more, and slide down. And so even from there, you can play with pelvic tilting. So you might keep your shoulder blades there, but you're just letting your pelvis rock back and forth. And it's not easy here because your thighs are starting to burn. And then slide back up. And from here, walk your feet closer to the wall. All right, so first just stand with your heels back against the wall and maybe shoulder blades back and head back. And just check in with your feet might be a little away from the wall actually. And just basically notice from the back of your pelvis up to your shoulder blades, how much of your back is coming away from the wall. Without judgment, just noticing what you tend to do with your posture. And then from there, I'm going to have you bring your upper back away from the wall and step one foot out to the side. So kind of like you would in a triangle pose, but not as wide of a step. So you just take a gentle step, maybe 3 feet distance. Your back foot, the one that's closest to the wall, go ahead and bring it all the way up against the wall. So your foot is on a slight angle, your heel is against the wall, and then you can straighten that extended leg, the externally rotated, and straighten it, but still using both feet for support. And your hands can just be against your thighs as you slide up and down. So I'm doing it here first without my back touching the wall. If you want, you could have your back against the wall and slide up and down. And so you could be pressing super grounded, firm, into the floor, and see how that feels on your hamstrings and all the way up through your sides. And then you could back off of that pressing a little bit and instead maybe engage more from your center. I don't know, I'm just throwing out this idea that the way I like to practice is just to try to stay curious, try to stay open to feeling different things in each pose. So from here, now you're going to bend into the knee and take some warrior two like pulses. But so the way that my hips are now, you see my hips are kind of tilted off to the side. So you might bring your hips back so that the pelvis is more in line right underneath your shoulders and ribs, and then bend in from there. And again, you might just try this way a few times, and then you might go back to tilting and seeing, oh yeah, one way feels better. And especially for your knee too. And your hands, you could bring your hands to your stomach. You could bring your arms out. And we're going to switch sides from here. So now just swivel the feet, bring the back heel up against the wall. The opposite leg, the foot isn't touching the wall. You have a little bit of space. But your feet, you're not really wide like you would be in a warrior two away from the wall. We're just starting with first the straight legs and the sliding the hands along the thighs. So you're checking out side waist, low back, hamstrings, ribs. Playing with engaging in different areas of the body. Noticing how your breath might change as well, depending on the shapes that you're taking and how fast or slow you're going. And so then eventually start to bend into that knee and take your warrior two like pulses. As I'm recording this, it's the last week of Taurus season in the middle of spring. So this whole month I've been playing with and exploring with using the ground for support, feeling that earth connection. Even if we're not literally on the earth, right? But we can use gravity. We'll see how this changes as we move next into the last month of spring and Gemini season. Okay, so after this, and maybe you've checked in with different pelvic tilts. The last thing we'll do here is turn both feet, step both feet out wide for your wide leg fold. So your toes might be facing forward, and you might decide too, with your back side against the wall, you might want your feet, again, a little further away from the wall like we did already in that first forward fold, and you're going to start to hinge forward at the hips. Note how you're feeling today. Bring your hands down to the floor if you can. Maybe you have a block or something close by, or pillows or something that you want to put your wrists onto. So sometimes I like to start with straight arms and straight-ish legs, just to find the lines of energy in the body, to find the action in my structure, in my muscles, and especially to notice my spine. And then eventually, if I'm feeling like today is a good day to surrender in it, then maybe you bend the elbows and let your head drop, And keep using the wall and the ground as your stabilizing support. So if you use those things, then your body can feel stable as well. Maybe shake your head out. Maybe even take your hands to the wall. And then back down to the floor. Okay, start to lift your head, your gaze, crawl your hands back underneath you, bend your knees, and start to heel toe your feet closer in. So you're setting up kind of like you would for a squat, but you could bring your elbows onto your thighs. Then from here, if you're able, bring your hands to your thighs. Figure out if there's a placement for your wrists that feels comfortable for you to be putting more of your load into. How you want to angle your hands. And then use that pressing down into the thighs, straightening the arms to find a little bit of traction through the spine into the pelvis. Also in the ribs. Take some focused breaths. You notice there is a lot of energy moving down into the feet, and then we'll press away from the thigh and come up to stand. Good. Use the wall, press away from the wall, shake your legs out. Okay, so now we get to come onto our mat. These, by the way, are yoga jellies, if you want to look them up. My friend Anita created them a few years ago, and they're pretty awesome for your knees and your wrists. So first, continue to shake your ankles out, and then I want you to walk on your mat or in your space in very silly, curious, connected ways. Spreading out your toes. So also during the pandemic, hopefully it means that you're not wearing shoes as much, which is actually really good for your body. So this is your chance to really focus on giving your feet some good health. Okay, from here lift your toes up and down, and then heels up and down. Steady on your feet so you can step your feet as far apart as you feel stable in your structure. Take your arms up, and you might stand straight, but then sometimes when you stand straight, you might realize you need a little bend of your knees. You might bend and you're like, that's too much bend. And then you figure out what feels good for you. A little wiggle of the hips, and then grab your left wrist, pull up and over to the right, your side bend. Come back to center, grab your right wrist, pull up and over to the left. With what your body can handle, make sure you're spreading your weight through your both feet. Come back up and lower your arms. Okay, hinge at the hips, fold forward. Now we're taking our forward fold away from the wall for the first time. Good, bring your fingers to your shins, come halfway up. So you're reaching your butt back like you're trying to push it against the wall again, and you're reaching the top of your head forward like you have another wall there that you want to try to reach. Hands can stay at your shins, arms are straight, and you're engaging through your whole center. Your back muscles, your stomach muscles, your thighs. And then slide back down. Good. Take your left hand to the middle of your mat, in between your feet, but out in front of you. I like to stay up on my finger pads, and you're going to twist to the right. Come back to center. Right hand down, twist to the left. Come back to center. And then from here, we're going to crawl to downward facing dog. So this is your first one of the day, of this practice. So you can spread your hands and feet out as you see fit, especially on the first one. Maybe a little bit of gentle rocking back and forth from plank to down dog. Doing a check-in of your capacity today for strength. Then dropping to your hands and knees. Okay. So from here, stand up on your knees for a moment. Let your hips sway. Then we're going to come back down to hands and knees. Take one leg back, doesn't matter which leg. Kick it back, bring it back underneath you. Other leg, kick it back. Do that again to each side. And then take the arm raises, your side lateral raises. And you might take a full circle, windmill with the arm on each side. Okay, from here then press firm into your hands, your knees, your feet. Pretend that your head is trying to reach a wall in front of you again, and that's using your own body energy. You might notice you start to sweat just by doing this. Doesn't look like you're doing anything, but you are. You're still holding it, but you're still breathing with focus. Okay, now relax. Come down to your elbows. Shake your wrists out. Down on our elbows, we're going to stay for a moment to kick the legs back again. Go twice on each side. And then settle into either child's pose, all the way sitting back, or staying up on your elbows and dropping your head. You're going to start to come back up to table. And this is where you might want to put some padding under your left knee. So if you have a blanket or a pillow or a towel, that could be good. We're going to take the right leg out to the side. So I'll angle a little bit so you can see. Right leg out to the side, and then you're going to stand up from that position. We're going to turn the right foot out to the right, so you externally rotate in the hips. And it's back to that triangle feeling. Now we do have a wider base than when we were doing it up against the wall. You're going to bring your hands against your thighs again and do the sliding up and down the legs. Until you feel comfortable, then you're going to slide that right hand down to just the shin, and maybe reach the left arm out to the left. Then bring the left hand to the left ribs. Spread your breath through your center. And then come back up. Okay, so now we're going to angle the right toes to face forward, Bend into the knee and come down. So you're in a side lunge. And you can rock side to side with it. You can even move cat-cows with it. And then we're going to crawl that right foot up to the mat. Last part of this sequence. You can use blocks or containers or boxes or something around you if you want to help use those things to come up to stand within this lunge position. So the back toes are going to curl under. You'll pick the left knee up and start to come up slowly. From here, bending into the front knee where you feel comfortable. But again, getting curious with your pelvis and how you need to hold yourself today. Some days I need to bend the back knee a little bit more, as you see here. Some days I'm straighter in that back leg. We're focusing more on the lower legs today and using the floor, using that earth grounding sensation to help us stay with ourselves. Okay, then when you're ready, start to hinge forward and come back down. Drop your left knee down to the floor or your prop. Okay, walk your hands to the inside, sweep your knee back behind you, and come to your downward facing dog. So set your stuff aside, curl the toes under, lift your hips up and back, spread your hands out. Shake your head. And then if it's in your practice, you might take a sun salutation, a vinyasa, maybe just plank back to down dog, or maybe just table and cat-cow. Moving slowly, wherever you're choosing to go. And then we'll drop back to our knees. Grab your props around you that you want to use. Padding definitely for under the right knee this time, and I'll angle a little bit. We're going to take the left leg out to the left. And then come to stand to begin. And you're going to turn the left toes out now. So again, you have that external rotation like you would for warrior two or triangle pose. Hands on the thighs and the hips, and you're going to start the sliding back and forth. After that nice long warm up and transition there, anchor through the knee, the foot, left hand to shin, right arm reaches out. So now we hold in the shape. And you could keep the arm out or bring the right hand to right ribs, elbow is pointing up in the air. Intentional breaths. And then slowly come back up. Angle your left foot to face forward. Bend into the knee, bring your hands down. So now you're in a side lunge. And you can rock in and out of the lunge. You might take some movement in the spine, in the hips. And eventually we're going to walk the hands to the right, crawl the left foot up onto your mat. This is where you might need extra props of some kind in your home for under your hands so you can help support yourself as we come up to stand within the lunge. So curl the right toes under, start to pick that right knee up, and then gradually see if it's there for you today to come upright within the lunge. So then just deciding where you want to be with it. Usually takes 30 seconds or so of shifting around. You can see today in my upper half, I'm trying to keep kind of loose. If it feels better for you to have action through the upper half, then go ahead and find, some arm shape that feels more supported. We're going to start to hinge forward, come back down, drop your right knee back down, and bring your left arm to the inside so you can sweep the knee back. Set your props to the side, and again we'll find our downward facing dog. Take a few breaths to get centered and grounded, and then decide if you want to drop to your knees and take cat-cow, or if you want to move through a vinyasa of your choice. And I used to say this in my classes in studios, but vinyasa, at least when I cue it, I really like it to mean linking together shapes in a mindful, connected way. Placing your body from one breath or one shape to the next in an intentional way. So it doesn't have to mean that same down dog to plank to chaturanga or stomach to back bend. Like, that's just kind of what someone decided one day was going to be vinyasa, but you get to decide what your vinyasa is going to be. Okay, so then from here, down dog, I want you to crawl your hands to your feet. See if you can. And then come all the way to stand. Use the floor, and maybe even use your exhale, maybe, to come rolling up. Good, shrug your shoulders. Shake it out. And you're gonna let your arms swing as you shake it out. Let your hands just kind of tap your sides and your back. Okay. Maybe come to more near the top of your mat and see if you can balance on your right foot. Pick your left knee up and just pick the knee up and then swing it back and kick forward and back. You could always use a wall or a chair. Okay, and then switch sides. Left foot down, pick your right knee up, and kick it back. Standing leg might need to be a bit bent. Use the support from the ground. Trust that your ankles are strong enough. And then release. Come down into your chair. So we did this at the wall, chair pose. Arms can then come forward. Flip the palms up if you'd like. Maybe bring the arms up by your ears. Sit down a little lower. And you could play with tucking and tilting and seeing, again, where I'm like right in the middle, where I tend to feel good. And then come back up. We're gonna balance on the right leg and see if we can step the left leg back. From here, drop the heel down to an angle, and your right foot is facing forward, and you're gonna hinge at the hips with straight-ish legs to come forward. So maybe your hands can come to the floor. I tend to still like using props. So blocks or boxes or books. Get creative with what's in your home. Because also using something that's higher up off the ground, you get to then use that support through the arms and the pressing down through both feet to feel engaged through your center again. And to feel like there's a sense of purpose for what you're doing with your breath. Little adjustments in the neck are always helpful. And then start to bend into your front knee. Bending into the front knee is going to pick that left foot up, and so you might curl the left toes under. And here you are back in this sort of runner's lunge. And we're going to lean into the left block just to help us open up, twisting to the right for a moment. Come back to center and see if you can take your hands or your blocks one arm's length forward, hop your back foot in one step, and then pick that leg up behind you. Try to hold, engage, bend the knee, straighten a few times, and then release. Feet together or near the top of your mat, stand up. Okay, now we're going to switch sides. So find your balance on your left leg, pick your right foot up, hands can come to hips, and you start to lunge back. Drop your right heel down at an angle. You might need to wiggle your feet so you have more of a balanced stance. When you feel you have that connection, you're going to press through both feet, keeping both legs somewhat straight as you tilt forward. Again, you'll reach out for your props that you might want to have around, and that encourages you to find the floor, the energy in the arms, an intentional breath in your center. There's also a place for folding forward and letting yourself surrender. But I find that if I'm wanting to be a little more intentional and attentive, then I like to stay more upright. So it kind of depends where you're at emotionally today. Okay, bend back into your front left knee. Just doing that picks your right heel up a little bit. So use that to keep curling the right toes under for your lunge, your runner's lunge. Lean into your right block, open to the left. Come back to center. Reach your arms out, one arm's length on both sides, and hop your back foot in until you feel like you can lift the back leg up to a hover. This is a warrior 3 variation, and you might bend and straighten that back leg that's in the air a couple of times and hold still, spread it out, and then release the right foot down. Good, come up to stand, shake it out. We'll do one more moment of vinyasa for you. It could be arms coming up, hinging at the hips, folding down. Stepping back. I like to come to down dog first to get stable and then transition from plank. Sometimes I hover, sometimes not. Cobra, up dog, even Sphinx. I even want to stay a little longer and then come back down. And then from here, come back to down dog. Shake your head. And then drop to your knees. Stand up on your knees, which you might need a little more padding again. Good. From there, I want us to bring our hands to our hips and take a slight back bend. So you could have hands just on the hips and lean back a little bit, or you could bring fingers pointing down. So on your back side at the top of the pelvis, bringing the elbows in towards one another, lifting your chest forward, and then coming back to center. To counter that, go ahead and round your back and release your arms to dangle down. And then while you're doing that, you're swaying a little bit side to side. And then, if you can, curl the toes under and see if you can do toe squat. So toes are curled under and you can sit back towards your heels. If it's too much, just come right back up, but maybe try to keep the toes curled under. Just to stretch the foot and the ankle for a moment. If you can sit back for full toe squat, see if you can bring your arms up over your head, bend one arm and reach the elbow so you can stretch the back of the arm. And then open, switch sides. This is a way to distract you from what's going on in your ankles and feet and quads. Or I shouldn't say distract, just kind of help you stay with yourself while you're holding, and then release. And then this is my favorite part, tap your toes into the floor. Okay, now it's time for us to come to our seat. We're going to start with one knee bent and the heel coming in closer to your hips. The other leg is out in front of you. And I have the leg kind of on a diagonal. You can see that. And you're going to use the same arm of the leg that's out in front of you and bent. You're going to use that to press the elbow against the inner knee and open into a side stretch. But you're isolating by pressing knee and elbow with each other to find your body's structure and stabilizing point. Back to center, good, and then we're going to see if we can keep moving that foot, the leg that's bent out to the side, move it in front of you, and then move the leg that's on the floor and bent, move that more in front of you as well. So Now we're ready for more of a twist. So we just open out to the side, and now we're gonna twist. So you're gonna take the opposite arm now, cross the body over the front knee or on top of it. So you can decide where your ribs and your center are at. And just twist opposite way than you previously did. What sometimes helps for me is using the ground again. So pressing the front foot down, pressing the hips down. Maybe even the back hand down into the floor. Come back to center. Last thing here, you can see if you can stack that front leg ankle on top of the knee that's been where it's at this whole time. The bottom foot, you see how I'm kind of scooting it forward. This is for this hip opening position that has many names. Fire log, double pigeon, square pose. You're trying to line up more or less ankle to knee on both sides. I always point out that I've been doing this shape for 20 years or so. At different points in my life, like just before and after and during pregnancy, I couldn't do this. Even now, it's different than it was last year at this time. Because it's a pandemic and I haven't been moving as much as normal. Been doing a lot more strength training and a lot more resting, but less cardio, I guess, less moving around. So I'm not sure if that resonates for you, but 1 week at a time, right? So if you're in this position wherever you are, wherever your knee is, could be up in the air, you might explore some shifting, some coming forward a bit. Maybe until there's a spot where you can hold still. Notice this side and then come back up. So I'm going to have you lean back onto your hands, remove the legs from where they are, and start to let the knees sway. You could stay with that, or I often like to let the knees bounce and just kind of wiggle the legs out front. Then, now bend your opposite leg, the one that was touching the floor the whole time. Make sure that knee is up and that foot is to the floor. The other leg is going to cross underneath you and be now touching the floor this whole time. Okay, so first we start with the knee that's bent with the knee up in the air. That's out at a diagonal. You can bring that elbow inside the knee. Use the knee and the elbow working with each other to take an opening away from that knee. Good, come back to center. Grab that leg that's out in front of you, move it more to the middle, and even the leg that's touching the floor, that thigh that's touching the floor, wiggle it more to the middle as well. So your ankle and heel is more underneath your thigh. Okay, so then opposite arm is going to cross over and either stay on top of the knee or cross all the way over the knee. The other hand is going to come behind your back to the floor. And this time you're going to breathe and shift slightly away from the body, but in a twist. Instead of opening out laterally, now you're in a twist. Good. Release back to center. Now we're gonna scoot the bottom foot further out in front of you and pick up the front foot and try to set the ankle right on top of that bottom knee. And so you're continuing to shift and maneuver and to see if more or less you can get the knees and the ankles in line, you know. Again, the knee might be up, the bottom leg might not be able to come fully forward. Just kind of work with where you're at. You could also use props and things. I meant to say that on the other side. You're at home. You get to, maybe you want to lay back at this point and do your own thing. Okay, but here we are now on the other side of this double pigeon pose. And so you might start to come forward to the side, back, and to the other side. And do these little adjustments to see if there's a spot that's asking you to stay with it. And then once you've found that spot, notice. Some days I'm off in my daydreams or my to-do lists, and I notice that that's where I'm at. Other days I'm really into the body and I notice, wow, this hip is really different than the other hip, or I'm really like focused on what's going on in the body. And I'm just sharing that because it's all part of the practice, and you know, yoga practice is that. It's finding connection to yourself. Okay, when you're ready, lean back. Sway the knees. Maybe shake the knees out in front of you. And then lay down. Okay, so I'm going to have you take your bridge pose. Bridge pose, you set your feet about as wide as your pelvis. You might need to kind of wiggle around, pick your hips up and figure out where that's at. And same with how close your feet are to you. And so some days too, I like my feet to be maybe a little further away than on other days. So you have to kind of adjust, pick your hips up and see how your knees are doing, where you're at. Same with the arms. Some days I like to press through the back of the elbows and triceps and shoulders to pick the hips up and use that and have the hands floating next to the hips. So that's one option. Another option would be hands next to you, palms down, and use the whole arm for support as you pick your hips up. Another option would be arms back behind you, maybe even in the cactus arms with your elbows bent, and pressing down through the back of your arms to lift your hips up. When you find your bridge pose of choice, see if you can stay with it. Keep your hips up and use the ground for support. Back of the head, back of the arms, bottoms of the feet. Once you've found that point of connection in all those areas, see if you can spread it out. Maybe it allows you to let go of clenching in larger muscle groups like your butt, or your back, or even your shoulders. Spread it out. And then start to lower down. Good, your hands could come in, your knees could sway. If you really enjoyed that, try it again. Otherwise, take your constructive rest, knees falling together. So if you want to try it again. Maybe try closing your eyes. And then release. Sway of the knees. And in your sway of the knees now, let your knees eventually fall to one side and hold for 3, 4 breaths. Eventually switching sides. And then bring your knees back upright. Let your feet come up off the floor, pick your feet up into the air. And then bring the big toes together, let the heels come out. Bring the heels together, big toes come out. So you're creating like a V shape, but in different positions. One is a regular V and one's an upside down. And you just feel that rotation in the legs and the ankles. And then point and flex the feet. Maybe open the legs a couple of times, bicycles. And now you're ready to rest. So in doing that, you might have felt that it was nice to have your feet up in the air. And so you could end with the legs up the wall. This moment that I'm recording this, we're getting closer to the new moon. So I like to take a longer rest and a more relaxing rest during this time. So if you get really close to the wall, you'll swing your legs up the wall. You could even put a pillow or a block under your hips to get a little higher up if you like, and let your feet come to the wall. And you can move your legs wider. You could have your feet to the wall like this. Anything goes. And in this moment, I'm going to turn off the camera and let you end your practice. So I encourage you to stay for as long as you can in this position.